Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
So you never know what's going to happen. You just
You send it and start going.
yeah. Sometimes I just hit record. Hey, everybody! Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it is Harry. It's a great day for a podcast with you, and it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're finally here at the end of Shackleton's journey, even though it's not any easier than it was before.
This is the multiple time I've read this. I've read this story, and it gets me every time. This is a fantastic thing. But before we get any further, I need to thank the listeners. Thank you for being here. This is we do this all for you, and we appreciate you being there. We appreciate you making us a global top 10% podcast. As always, you can reach us at buffnagle@buffnagle.com. And do us a favor, hit the smiley star button. But more than that, tell your friends, hey, listen to this. Here's a 6-part Shackleton story. Join the buff, join the love. Be one of the cool kids.
That's right. That listens to Bufnagle the podcast.
Listens to the podcast. Yeah, we'll work on some merch for you. If you'd like some merch, let us know. We'll come up with something for you. But in all seriousness, we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you looking out for us too. So, Harry, last time we left Earnest Shackleton and his merry men, they were somewhere just west of South Georgia Island, somewhere in the middle, toward the end of the book Endurance by Alfred Lansing, published originally in 1955 and published about 700,000 times since then. A great story. But our guys were in a boat, 5 of them or 6 of them, and they're essentially out of water. They're running low on energy. They've been at it 2 weeks. The other guys are stuck on Elephant Island. Things look bad.
Yeah, things are not looking well for them. They're not necessarily running out of supplies. They're running out of time because they don't have the supplies, right? So they have the food. There's water all around them, but they can't use it. And they're kind of at this point where their supplies are beginning to dwindle. If they don't reach their destination, they're going to be out of luck within about the next 36 hours.
Yeah, so they're out of water. So we on May 8th, 1916, they are that morning. It's at about 6 a.m. Their computations from their readings put them about 15 miles offshore, but there's low clouds and they can't really see where they are. It's just what do they say? They're flying blind, right? But except they're not flying; they're boating. The peaks on South Georgia Island are like 10,000 feet high.
Right. So you think that you could see them.
You should be able to see these things, right? And they can't find them. They're seeing no evidence of any land nearby. And they're like, maybe we missed it. We could have gone a little bit north and we might have missed it. We could have gone a little bit south and missed it. It's really hard to tell. But their computations say that they're about 15 miles off. Within about 4 hours, though, they start to see seaweed. They see a cormorant. Do you know what a cormorant is, Harry?
I'm guessing it's a type of bird.
It is a bird. And I looked at this amazing... This is the problem with the internet and the wonder of the internet. What is so great about cormorants? Cormorants are expert divers. Some dive as deep as 45 meters. It's 150.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't do that.
I can't even. My pool goes to about 7 feet, and at the bottom, at 7, my ears start popping, and that's not a good thing. They speed along underwater via their web feet, using their wings as rudders. Some colonies of cormorants have been observed herding fish. They're nasty.
Fall into the center and pluck them out one by one.
I'm sure you've seen those videos of the birds, boom, 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 bombing. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, they saw a cormorant, and I'm sure they had that discussion as they were boating there.
That's right.
But there was fog around them, and it was really hard to tell. And all of a sudden, right around noon, the fog splits, the clouds open up a little bit, and boom, right there for a couple seconds in front of them, there is land. And McCarthy spots it. Land. It was McCarthy's voice, strong and confident. He was pointing dead ahead, and there it was, a black, frowning cliff with patches of snow clinging to its side. It was just visible between the clouds, possibly 10 miles away. A moment later, the clouds curved like a curtain across the water, shutting off the view. But no matter what, it was there, and they had all seen it. So they've got to be giddy at this point, just giddy happy. It's about noon on May 8th, and they are essentially at South Georgia Island.
They are on the precipice of landing where they need to be. Finally.
After 500 plus days, they're getting to an island that actually has some semblance of civilization on it.
Right.
All right. And
Yep.
somebody can get up. So they keep going. About an hour later, they were able to get a sketch. They can see the land, and they draw a sketch. Somebody draws a sketch of the mountain, and then they compare that sketch to the maps. Now, I think right now we would take a photo of it with our phone, and we would hit the Google show me what island this is. But they were able to compare that and say, okay, this is where we must be on this island because this mountain range matches this one on page 362 of the nautical charts.
Yep.
So by about 2:30 that afternoon, they are 3 miles out. Everything seemed perfect, they say, but not for long. Within a few minutes, the deep rumbling sound of breakers reached them, and then dead ahead and off to the right, an occasional spout of bursting spray shot skyward. As they drew closer, they could see the backs of great seething combers hurtling south shoreward as the Cape Horn graybeards blindly advanced to their destruction on uncharted reefs. The whole complexion of things changed suddenly. There could be no thought of landing, not here at least, for the boat would not live 10 seconds on those breakers. It was something they didn't deserve, a needless cruelty. The land lay just in front of them, and they had earned it. Yet now that journey was done. Sanctuary was ironically denied them. So this is, I guess, in the movie version, you're thinking it's just about done. You're looking at your watch. It's like
there's 15 minutes left in the film. Well, there's 7 minutes for credits.
So we're at the end here. We're going to wrap this up. A little tie up all the loose ends. The Drake passage has another thing. Has another thought in mind for them. So they can't go straight in toward South Georgia Island because the reefs and the breakers would absolutely destroy them. So they have to make a decision. What are we going to do? We can't go straight here ahead. Do we go kind of like the island, Harry, sits from the northwest to the southeast. Yep. It kind of sits there at a 45-degree angle, kind of, and it kind of curls. The south side of that is concave.
Concave, yep.
Yeah. So they're kind of underneath that, and they could go north, up, try to go north and see if they can find a place to land, or they can go southeast, but they have to figure something out pretty quick because otherwise they're going to hit those breakers and it's going to be over. Everything is going to be for naught. So at 3:10, they decide to head back out to sea. They have to turn and get more distance around them. Otherwise they're going to get plastered. And since it's late in the afternoon, they are going to have to wait, Harry, till morning. I liken it to this. Like I used to back in the days when I used to go to work, I would go to work and then I'd be there all day and I'd be like, I just want to get home. And you get in the car and you fight traffic on the way home and you pull into the neighborhood and you go around all the little kids playing hopscotch or whatever it is in the road. And you pull into the driveway and the garage door goes up and you get ready to pull your car into the garage. And there in your space in the garage, like 4 feet from the end of where your hood of your car goes, is a kid's bicycle. And you go, geez, you got to stop the car. You got to get out. You got to move the bicycle. You got to get back in the car. You got to, and it's, so take that feeling, that frustration feeling and magnify it
by about a year's worth of days.
Yeah. Or more, or like a whole career of those in one situation. So they got to head back out to sea. Remember, they're running out of water. Oh, yep. Did I mention it's cold down there? I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this in the podcast. I remember. And so then the rain comes and sleet and that's not enough. Let's get some hail. Let's throw hail at them. So they have to wait out this storm doing this heave to thing that they do.
Yep.
Right. Seconds turn to minutes, minutes turn to hours. They wait all night long through this thing. The next day, May 9th, they have 65 knot winds.
Sure, that's no problem, right?
40 foot rollers are coming at them. The Drake Passage will not concede easily, is what we're learning here. Visibility was near zero. They have no idea where they are. But you know what? It gets worse because now the winds are up to 80 miles an hour. By 2 o'clock on May 9th, remember, they were within sight of the island 24 hours prior.
Yes.
And they've just been hanging out in this. They've been hanging. When you're in the airplane and you're circling, waiting to land. And so this is the situation. You are in the middle seat in the back row. The toilet has overflowed. You're tight in that seat because the people next to you are.
One family has 5 kids, and they've decided to take the 3 in front of you as well as the 2 next to you.
Yep, and the kids are bouncing around. They're just being kids, but that's what they are, and they're noisy and they're screaming, and you got turbulence, and you're circling and you're circling and you're circling for 24 hours. They did that. They get kind of a cloud break around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they realize that they are very, very close to land, and they are within a couple hundred meters of some breakers. So things look bad when the clouds open up. Vastly more important, in a single glimpse, they saw to their terror that they were only a short distance outside the line of breakers, the point at which the seas ceased to behave like swells and became combers instead, rushing faster and faster toward their own destruction against the land. As each swell passed under them, they could feel it tugging momentarily at the boat, trying to get a hold of her and hurl her toward the beach. It seemed now that everything, the wind, the current, even the sea itself, were united in a single determined purpose, once and for all, to annihilate this tiny boat, which had thus far defied all efforts to destroy it. They had no choice. Then they have to try to sail out of this thing against the wind so they don't get carried toward the shore and across breakers. No, they've been at this 24 hours. They've been at this, once they get exhausted. There. And it's been 14 days, 15 days since they left Elephant Island, right? And they're out of water. And you know what?
Cold?
Yeah, and it's bingo. Yeah. It's cold. Okay. So they make this attempt to sail into the wind, all right? And they this is a strong wind, and they're trying to cut. You can't go directly into a wind when you're sailing, but you can go kind of tangentially toward it. Yeah, you can go against it. They slowly crawl southeast, and they're constantly bailing. This water is pouring over them all over the place. They almost run into Anankov Island. They think they're going to crash into this little island that's about a mile offshore, and they think that was the end. They thought it was like, we're not even going to make it to South Georgia. We're not even going to get to crash on South Georgia Island. We're going to get to crash on Anankov Island. Worsley thought to himself of the pity of it all. He remembered the diary he had kept ever since the Endurance had sailed from South Georgia almost 17 months before. The same diary, now wrapped in rags and utterly soaked, was stowed in the forepeak of the Caird. When she went, it would go too. Worsley thought not so much of dying, because that was now so painfully inevitable, but the fact that no one would ever know how terribly close they had come. He waited at the helm, silent and tense, and braced for the final shattering impact when the Caird's bottom would be torn out against some unseen rock. As he watched the water streaming down his face and dripping from his beard, the sky to the east crept into view, and he realized they were clearing the island. We know now in their story what they were thinking at these times. Had they actually crashed into the island, we would never know. And I think back, we did a series with some Explorer things with Zach, and we talked about the Italian brothers who left, who sailed out of the Mediterranean Sea around 1200, and they went west, and no one ever heard from them again. And I imagine, did they go through this? Did they get really close to something? Did they crash in the Azores? Did they make it to Nova Scotia? Did they go to the Caribbean, or did they just sink out in the middle, some rogue wave take them down? We are fortunate that we have this now, and we can see what they were going through.
I think that's really important. We talked about this a while ago too on a completely separate podcast about the importance of writing things down and keeping a log and keeping it such that future generations can read about what happened. And nowadays we kind of have that in a digital form. It's a little bit faster for upload and a little bit more real time. But this is as close as we get. And without this whole book and this whole adventure is all for naught.
And all we know is that somebody might say, "Oh yeah, there was a bunch of guys, and they went and they got crushed in the ice, and that was that." They found the
skeleton
ship.
remains on Elephant Island.
Yeah, right. Because maybe those guys would have made it to Deception Island had they bailed out and done the other thing. But they found that ship, Harry, about a year ago in the Weddell Sea. Yeah, they found the Endurance. So, all right, so they clear Annenkov Island. The storm lessens a little bit, and the winds turn to the southwest. So they swing back northwest. And they're bailing this. I mean, there's still a big storm. They are all five out of the 6 people are involved at all times, either steering the boat or bailing. They were bailing with anything that they had to keep this thing above water. And they bail till midnight. Okay, so it's been a day and a half that they've been there trying to get to land.
Yep.
By 7 a.m., they are the South Georgia Island is now 10 miles to their starboard. All right, so it's off to their right, because they're going back kind of north. They fight the winds one last time. They decide to go to Haakon Bay, Haakon Bay. It's this big long bay on the concave side of the island. And as they're going in, the winds try to push them back out one last time. They take 5 attempts to actually go through a little gap in the breakers to get past the breakers into the bay. And once they get inside there, they drop the sails and they row in, and they find a beach. And by 5 p.m. on May 10th, they are back on South Georgia Island after 522 days. And they find, this is the one good thing that happened the whole time. They land on the beach, and there's a glacier there, and the glacier is slowly melting, as glaciers always do. And it's dripping fresh water. And all 6 of the guys from the Caird bound out of there and take advantage of the water there. And they finally made it back to land.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, I think what really gets me here is when Lansing writes that they were standing at last on the island from which they had sailed 522 days before. They have literally come full circle, and there's only 6 of them currently, right? Yeah. We still have to go back and rescue the others. They're now on South Georgia, and the only thing that they want is water, because they have nothing left. Literally, physically, mentally, possessively, materially, nothing left.
They got nothing left except themselves, their humanity, their intellect, and their desire to keep going. And I know that sounds a little campy, but that's what it takes in situations like this.
I don't have a dog at home, but I do have 2 cats. But if I did have a dog, and you know what's really important for dogs?
Smoothies?
No, how you feed the dogs and how you take care of them. So I would consider myself a certified dog lover.
Sophie was around us for 17 years, and she was a great little doggy. And one thing that always concerned me was making sure that she was eating right, and that she was getting what she should get, because she's a dog doing dog things.
That's right. And you know what she should probably be getting, is what you probably should have fed her, is Nom Nom.
Yes, Nom Nom is our sponsor this week. Nom Nom is it's a food service for your dog. It is full of fresh protein that your dog loves, and vitamins and nutrients that they need to thrive. Your dog's health starts in their gut. A better diet means softer coats, more energy, better breath, and a smaller, more consistent stool. Your dog can't tell you if it is healthy, but you can tell when your dog's health improves. At Nom Nom, they have board-certified veterinary nutritionists, and they are kind of a big deal. And Nom Nom has 2 of them on staff that work extensively to ensure everything that is sent out is the very best for your dog's livelihood. You go online to the link in the description, use the Bufnagle code, you'll save 50% off your order. You tell them about your dog, age, breed, weight, allergies, and all that kind of stuff, and they will tailor a specific amount of individually packaged Nom Nom meals and send them straight to you. You store them in your freezer or your fridge and serve them to your dog when your dog is hungry, and you watch your dog become happy, healthy, and the dog you always wanted them to be.
That's right. So isn't it time to feel good about the food you're feeding your dog? Order Nom Nom today and go to the link in the description below for the podcast and get 50% off your order plus free shipping. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. That means if your dog doesn't love fresh, delicious meals, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom.
Now, the ship got damaged coming in there. They landed up on the shore there, and it kind of buffeted around by the waves. The rudder has now broken off of the Caird. So the original plan in landing on South Georgia Island on the west side, the southwest side, is to refuel water and food, sail back around the top, and go around to the whaling station. But at this point, they're like, yeah, that ain't going to work.
Yeah, the boat's not going to make it.
So they take some time to get, they're so weak at this point, they can't even pull the boat on shore. So they have to just kind of, and they can't camp and rest because the boat will get pulled away, and the boat has all their stuff in it. And so they have to unload the boat before they can do anything. They decided that 3 of them are going to march to the other side. They're going to leave as soon as they can. They're going to march across South George Island, which has never been done before.
With its 10,000-foot peaks.
Exactly.
Yep.
And we'll just walk over there and get a boat on the other side, and we'll come back and get you guys.
Yeah, can you imagine, there's a lot of climbers these days that are like, yeah, I've climbed an 8,000 foot, or I've climbed a 10er or a 14er.
Yeah.
Shackleton's like, yeah, we've just been exhausted for a year and a half, so we're going to go climb a couple of 10,000 footers and add that to our log.
Yeah, and they don't even have real equipment. They have 50 feet of rope.
Yep.
And McNeish actually takes some screws out of the boat, and he puts them in their boots so that they have like grippy, I think they call them crampons. So they have these grippy things on their boots so they can make the walk. So they make preparations. They get 12 hours of sleep. They're going to sail to the head of the bay, which is farthest east, and that's going to knock about 6 miles off the trip. But the next day it rains. On the 15th, they get on the water, and they find another place to camp, but they can't go much further. And the 16th it rains. 17th they do recon. 18th they're still waiting. But early in the morning on the day, I think it's the 17th, they decide that they're gonna go. Shackleton writes a letter. He has to you have to document this stuff. You're in charge of the expedition. You have to document it. He writes this letter. He writes this letter to McNeish.
Sir, I'm about to try to reach Havisk on the east coast of this island for the relief of our party. I am leaving you in charge of the party consisting of Vincent, McCarthy, and yourself. You will remain here until relief arrives. You have ample seal food, which you can supplement with birds and fish according to your skill. You are left with a double-barreled gun, 50 cartridges, and other rations. You also have all the necessary equipment to support life for an indefinite period in the event of my non-return. You had better, after winter is over, try and sail around to the east coast. The course I am making towards Havisk is east magnetic. I trust to have you relieved in a few days.
There's the plan. And there's the documentation that he wrote that so that when they show up, they're like, did you kill Shackleton? No, he wrote me this note.
No, he wrote me this letter.
So at 2 a.m., they're up and they're like, you know what? The moon's out and it's clear. No sense waiting.
Get going. Yep. Because it's winter, right? It's still winter in Antarctica because we're in May.
And it's cold. It's still cold there. Right? So they start hiking east at the end of the bay. They start going up. It's Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean, and they go along the beach for a while, and then they go up the snow slope, and it's like a 20-mile hike. It's not that far,
realistically, right?
But it's like impossible. Right? These are really steep things. By 7 a.m. they think they're really doing great. They're heading toward the snow-covered lake, and they realize the snow-covered lake is not a snow-covered lake. It's actually it's Possession Bay, which has a glacier on it, and it's the ocean, which is on the correct side of the island, but they can't get off there because there's no beach. Like if there were a beach all the way around the island, they could just take whatever bay they dump into and walk around the edge of the
right.
But these are like sheer cliffs all around. It's very rare to have have a bay that has a beach on it. So they have to backtrack. So there's this whole trip across this is go a little bit forward, realize you're in the wrong place, come and backtrack. And by that afternoon, by 3 o'clock that afternoon, they are kind of on a real, we used to call it a hog's back, a very narrow, very long snake-like ridge. And Shackleton is actually sitting with one leg on each side of this ridge. And it's probably, I don't know, they're 4,000 or 5,000 feet up, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they realize darkness is coming. It's cold. Did I mention it's cold? Yeah. Right. It's cold. Right. And they can see looking in both directions that weather is coming in and there's no easy way down. And so it's a problem for them. And they're figuring, how are we going to get down? And Shackleton realizes if we don't get down, we will die up here. Furthermore, The fog creeping up behind them was approaching very rapidly, threatening to obliterate everything, leaving them blinded and trapped along this razorback. The time for hesitation was past, and Shackleton swung himself over the side. Working furiously, he began to cut steps in the face of the cliff, descending slowly, a foot at a time. A bitter chill had come into the air, and the sun was nearly down. Gradually, they were getting lower, but it was maddeningly slow progress. After 30 minutes, the ice-hard surface of the snow grew softer, indicating that the grade was not as steep. Shackleton stopped short. He seemed to realize all at once the futility of what he was doing. At the rate they were going, it would take them hours to make the descent. Furthermore, it was probably too late to turn back. He hacked out a small platform with the axe and then called to the others to come down to join him. There was no need to explain the situation. Speaking rapidly, Shackleton said simply that they faced a clear-cut choice. If they stayed where they were, they would freeze. In an hour, maybe two. They had to get lower with all possible haste. So he suggested they slide. Worsley and Crean were stunned, especially for such an insane solution to be coming from Shackleton. But he wasn't joking. He wasn't even smiling. He meant it, and they knew it. But what if they hit a rock? Crean wanted to know. Could they stay where they were? Shackleton replied, his voice rising. The slope, Worsley argued. What if it didn't level off? What if it was just another precipice? Shackleton's patience was going. Again, he demanded, could they stay where they were? Obviously, they could not. And Worsley and Crean reluctantly were forced to admit it. Nor was there really any other way of getting down. And so the decision was made. Shackleton said they would slide as a unit, holding onto one another. They quickly sat down, untied the rope which held them together. Each of them coiled up his share to form a mat. And Worsley locked his legs around Shackleton's waist and put his arms around Shackleton's neck. Crean did the same with Worsley, and they looked like three tobogganers without a toboggan. Altogether, it took a little more than a minute, and Shackleton did not permit any time for reflection. When they were ready, he kicked off. In the next instant, their hearts stopped beating. They seemed to hang poised for a split second. Then suddenly the wind was shrieking in their ears, and a white blur of snow tore past. Down, down. They screamed, not in terror necessarily, but simply because they couldn't help it. It was squeezed out of them by rapidly mounting pressure in their ears and against their chest. Faster and faster. Down, down, down. Then they shot forward onto level, and their speed began to slacken. A moment later, they came to an abrupt halt in a snowbank. They picked themselves up. They were breathless, and their hearts were pounding, but they found themselves laughing uncontrollably. What had been a terrifying prospect possibly 100 seconds before had turned into a breathtaking triumph. That I giggled out loud reading that, Harry. That was like, that's the second best part of the book, and the best part is coming up. What a wonderful solution, and that's so crazy, it just might work.
It's so crazy, it just might work. And I think it's because it came from Shackleton, they realized, no, this really is our only chance at survival. We have no other recourse. This is it.
They had, and apparently that distance was a tremendous distance vertically, like 2,000 vertical feet. And like, if you ever been skiing out west in the big mountains like at Vail or places like that, where the vertical drop is thousands of feet, you can travel that distance really rapidly, and it's something you wouldn't do. It's something you would do with big boards on your feet, but you would never do it just walking.
No, I can't imagine just putting myself in a tobogganless toboggan and sliding down
on your buttocks down to the
That's
bottom.
right.
So they're down.
But now they have to keep going.
Yeah, so night falls, all right, but the moon comes out, and this allows them to see better, and they keep, it's another one of these things. They go, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They take a wrong turn. They have to go back around this side of the mountain or on that side of the mountain, and they go up and down and up and down. But by 6 a.m., they're starting to see things that look like Stromness Bay. They're like, isn't that mountain above Stromness Bay? And so they stop to have breakfast, and at 6:30. They hear a steam whistle from the from the camp, from the whaler camp, and they realize that they are close. And they said, "Do you think that was the steam whistle from the space?" So they as they're packing up, they're waiting and listening, and they know there will be another whistle at 7 a.m. And they watch their chronometer, and to the second, it ticks down, and boom, that thing goes, and they start descending towards Stromness. They're on some glaciers, ice fields, and There's cold water flowing off of them. There's this waterfall. They got to go down. It's just terrible. By 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they stroll into Stromness. Almost simultaneously, all 3 of the men remembered their appearance. Their hair hung down almost to their shoulders, and their beards were matted with salt and blubber oil. Their clothes were filthy and threadbare and torn. Worsley reached under his sweater and carefully took out 4 rusty safety pins they had hoarded for almost 2 years. With them, he did his best to pin up his major rents in his trousers.
You got to look good.
Well,
Right. You're trying to look presentable after being at sea for a year and a
but think
half.
about that. They were doing all this stuff to survive, and now they're out of that. They recognize when they're walking into town. Like, you're coming into town from the place where there is no town, right? It's not like there's a street in. They're just like walking out of the wilderness, and all of a sudden, like, here they are. They're marching in there, and they're like, oh, better brush myself off, get my hair. I can see these guys are like, oh, how do I make myself look better? Because they looked terrible.
Matthias Anderson was the station foreman at Stromness. He had never met Shackleton, but along with everyone else in South Georgia, he knew that the Endurance had sailed from there in 1914 and had undoubtedly been lost with all hands in the Weddell Sea. Just then, however, his thoughts were a long way from Shackleton and the ill-fated Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition. He had put in a long workday, beginning at 7 a.m., and it was now after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was tired. He was standing on the dock, supervising a group of his men who were unloading supplies from a boat. Just then he heard an outcry and looked up. 2 small boys, about 11 years old, were running, not in play, but in terror. Behind them, Anderson saw the figures of 3 men walking slowly and with great wariness in his direction. He was puzzled. They were strangers, certainly, but that was not so unusual as the fact that they were coming, not from the docks where a ship might come in, but from the direction of the mountains, the interior of the island. As they grew closer, he saw that they were heavily bearded, and their faces were almost black except for their eyes. Their hair was as long as a woman's and hung down almost to their shoulders. For some reason, it looked stringy and stiff. Their clothing was peculiar, too. It was not the sweaters and boots worn by seamen. Instead, the 3 men appeared to have on parkas, though it was hard to tell because their garments were in such a ragged state.
By then, the workmen had stopped what they were doing to stare at the 3 strangers approaching. The foreman stepped forward to meet them. The man in the center spoke in English. "Would you please take us to Anton Anderson?" he said softly. The foreman shook his head. Anton Anderson was not at Stromness any longer, he explained. He had been replaced by regular factory manager Thoraf Sorrel. The Englishman seemed pleased. "Good," he said. "I know Sorrel well." The foreman led the way to Sorrel's house, about 100 yards off to the right. Almost all the workmen on the pier had left their jobs to come see the 3 strangers who had appeared at the dock. Now they lined the route, looking curiously at the foreman and his 3 companions. Anderson knocked at the manager's door, and after a moment, Sorrel himself opened it. He was in his shirt sleeves, and he still sported a big handlebar mustache. When he saw the 3 men, he stepped back, and a look of disbelief came over his face. For a long moment, he stood shocked and silent before he spoke. "Who the hell are you?" he said at last. The man in the center stepped forward. "My name is Shackleton," he replied in a quiet voice. Again, there was silence. Some say that Sorrel turned away and wept. And this, I've read
And
this.
we did too.
I mean, I remember, like, it's very rare that I tear up at margarine commercials that are good, but it's very rare that I tear up reading a book. This was like, I remember I was up late at night, I was reading this, and tears pouring down my face, and I'm like, I want my wife to see it.
Well, see,
What are
I
you
was
reading?
reading it in the living room,
Yeah.
and I read this, and I started crying, and Jamie's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "He made it. He did it. He's there."
It's over. At least, well, I'm sorry, this little piece is over, right? There's still 3 guys.
Sure,
over
there's
there. Yeah.
there's 3 guys on the other side of the island, and 22 remaining on Elephant Island.
And so it was wonderful. It's just an absolute wonderful story. Now, of course, they get to bathe and shave, all right? And then they have some dinner. Worsley goes off that evening to get McNeish, McCarthy, and Vincent in a boat that it's not just him alone, right? A bunch of guys go over. They go
Sure.
around. They go around the island. They go get them. Shackleton arranges to get a ship to go to Elephant Island. That evening, a sort of crude reception was held in what Worsley described as a large room full of captains and mates and sailors and hazy with tobacco smoke. 4 white-haired veteran Norwegian skippers came forward. Their spokesman, speaking in Norse with Sorrel translating, said that they had sailed the Antarctic seas for 40 years and that they wanted to shake the hands of the men who could bring an open 22-foot boat from Elephant Island through the Drake Passage to South Georgia. And then, see, I'm going to tear up again here. Hey? Then every man in that room stood up, and the 4 old skippers took Shackleton and Worsley and Crean by the hand and congratulated them on what they have done. Many of the whalermen were bearded and dressed in heavy sweaters and boots. There was no formality. There were no speeches. They had no medals or decorations to bestow, only their heartfelt admiration for an accomplishment which perhaps only they would ever fully appreciate. And their sincerity lent to the scene a simple but profoundly moving solemnity. Of the honors that followed, and there were many, possibly none ever exceeded that night of May 22nd, 1916, when in a dingy warehouse on South Georgia, with the smell of rotting whale carcasses in the air, the whalermen of the South Ocean stepped forward one by one and silently shook hands with Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean. That's all you get, and that's all they needed.
So not only were the skippers and the seamen unbelievably appreciative of what had happened and transpired, but let's not forget about the crossing to South Georgia, which at the beginning of the epilogue, right, has only been accomplished once in the same time frame. Which only happened one other time, 40 years later in 1955, by a survey team, just to kind of like see what Shackleton did.
Yeah, and they said there was an easy way to do it and a hard way to do it, and the easy way, like if you and I, Harry, decided that we're going to have Bufnagle the experience, all right, and you pay obscene amounts of money to join us to do something fun, and we decide to go, like, we'll do things like kind of like we'll say, well, we're going to route the route this way. We're not going to take undue risk. If the weather's bad, we're going to stay back. This was the only thing to do. And so the question of is it safe or not safe was irrelevant. This is what you do at the time. And they said that you could take the high road or the low road, and the high road is the safe one. They said Shackleton and his men took the low road, and that is, and nobody does that anymore if you're going to cross South Georgia Island. So they did it the hard way,
right? But they still made it.
They made it, yeah. And then
But so there's a couple more things to do, right?
Yep.
You got to get the boat ready to go rescue the guys on Elephant Island,
right?
And they've been waiting for months now. It's the end of May when Shackleton arrives on South Georgia, but you still got to get back.
Yeah. So he tries a bunch of different ways to do this, and it is as frustrating as the other things, perhaps even more because there are things out of his control now. He arranges to get a ship, and that fails within the first week. He contacts the government of Uruguay to get a vessel, and that fails within 6 days. They almost run into ice here; they can't get through. All right, he gets a wooden schooner named the Emma, and that makes it 3 weeks, but they never get more than 100 miles closer to the island. On August 25th, they get the Chilean freighter, the Yelchos, and they reach Elephant Island on August 30th, 4 months, 6 days since they had left. And then the story is told from the perspective of the guys on the island. The lunch was ready about 12:45, and they all gathered in their hut, except Marston, who had gone to the lookout bluff to make some thumbnail sketches. A few minutes later, they heard his footsteps running along the path, but nobody paid much attention. He was simply late for lunch. Then he put his head inside and spoke to Wild in a tone that was so breathless that some of the men thought he sounded casual. "Hadn't we better send up some smoke signals?" he asked. For a moment there was silence, and then, as one man, here I go again, they grasped what Marston was saying. Before there was time for a reply Ord Leeds recorded. There was a rush of members tumbling over one another, all mixed up with mugs of seal hoosh, making a simultaneous dive for the door hole, which was immediately torn to shreds, so that those members who could not pass through it on account of the crush simply made their exits through the wall, or what remained of it. Some put their boots on, others didn't bother. James put his on the wrong feet. Sure enough, there was a small ship, only about a mile offshore.
And then Macklin goes up to the lookout bluff, tears off his Burberry jacket as he runs, and ties it to the halyard of an oar that served as their flagpole. And he was only able to hoist it part of the way up before it jammed. But Shackleton saw, and apparently later on, Shackleton says he saw the signal at half staff and his heart sank because he took it to be a sign that some of the party had been lost.
The ship approached within several hundred yards and then stopped. The men at shore could see a boat being lowered. 4 men got into it, followed by a sturdy, square-fit figure they knew so well. It was Shackleton. A spontaneous cheer went up. In fact, the excitement ashore was so intense that many men actually were giggling. Within a few moments, the boat was near enough for Shackleton to be heard. "Are you all right?" he shouted. "All well," they replied. Wild guided the boat to a safe place among the rocks, but because of the ice around the spit of land, it was impossible to make a landing, so the boat was held a few feet off. Wild urged Shackleton to come ashore, if only briefly, to see how they had fixed
how we did.
Look what we did! Hey, Ernest, I got to show you how we did. Okay, to see how well we had fared in the last 4 months. But Shackleton, though he was smiling and obviously relieved, was still quite noticeably anxious and wanted only to be away. He declined the offer and urged the men to get on board as quickly as possible. Certainly no great urging was needed, and one at a time they jumped from the rocks into the boat, leaving behind them, without a second thought, dozens of personal little items which only an hour before had been considered almost indispensable. One load was rowed out to the Yelcho, and then a second, and throughout it all, Worsley had watched anxiously from the bridge of the ship. Macklin wrote in his diary, "I stayed on deck to watch Elephant Island recede in the distance. I could still see my Burberry jacket flapping in the breeze on the hillside. No doubt it will flap there to the wonderment of gulls and penguins till one of our familiar gales blows it all to ribbons."
And they all made it, but not all 56 feet, right? There's one amputation of a foot, I believe.
Yeah. So there's, and then the heart attack guy, and so it wasn't without some loss. Okay, so all right, so this has been 6. Thank you for those of you who have been with us for 6 weeks to talk about this, and it has been even more fun to read this. I think this is probably at least my 3rd time through this book, because it was so exciting to make the notes and do the research as I was going. Like, you look at the map and see where it's going and dive into what a cormorant is, or that kind of stuff. And so this has been great. Thank you for being with us. I have a couple things that I wrote down that I think are lessons. I'll call them lessons, but the first part are just like if you're going to read this book, and you will read this book, all right? It's Endurance by Alfred Lansing. The version I have has an introduction by Nathaniel Philbrick. First of all, if you're going to do it, get a map. Have your map ready, or your Google, whatever, your computer thing, whatever, and look up these locations so you can see what this island is, where that island is, and it's difficult because it's the South Pole, so everything's north.
Right. It's mostly just east and west at that point. Yeah,
and it's east and west are really circles, right? It's a circle thing, not just a straight line, so it's a little complicated. All right. The other thing that really helped me was studying nautical terminology. Now, Craig knows this stuff back and forth, right? Because he was Navy. All right. But things like port and starboard, bow and stern, leeward, windward, all right, what the wind directions mean. Like a southwest wind is coming from the southwest. It's not going to the south.
It's taking you northeast.
Right. So, I mean, it is what it is. Okay. So learn those things. And look up the pictures as you go. Like, look up what the cormorant is. Look what a sea leopard looks like. Watch a video of a sea leopard, and then quiver in terror. Imagine okay. You know what I think would be great, and this I know we read a decent amount from this book, and we did a lot on this last episode. I just think that's a really good thing to do, and I think because it helps. There's something to be said for video, but there's something for audio as well. And I think reading the book aloud in a group, even if it's just you and your buddy or you and your spouse or whatever, and discuss it as you go. That it will help understanding, and it helps to practice storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a lost art, I think. And this kind of just gives it to you. All you have to do is you have to say it in the right, you know, in the right manner, right? Make sure the commas are in the spot, put emphasis on the period at the end of the sentence. Put yourself into the situation. You don't have to be a professional actor or a voice actor or anything, but it really helps you understand what is being written, especially all of the journal entries.
Absolutely. I will admit there were times when I was reading from here that I edited it along the way. I was like, I'll change the words here a little bit. And I don't know, Harry, you're probably reading along and recognized when I was doing that and didn't stop me. So I thank you for that. So, and you know what? Practice writing things down. Like if you have a little story, write it down, even if it's just an email to your friends or in a log or a diary of some sort. Write things down. We do it here. I think this is kind of a little cheat that we do here with the podcast. Like I have pages and pages of notes now from this book. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with them. But we have the audio version here, which is kind of good. And maybe somebody will listen to this sometime and then make notes about what we said about our notes about the book. Or you can just read the book. Read the book, okay? And then general life lessons from this thing. Go do something hard.
Out of your comfort zone.
Out of your comfort zone. And maybe, some people have different levels of comfort zone, but do something like hard, like vacation to Tierra del Fuego, and like not on a boat where they serve you like shrimp cocktail. Like do it the hard, like figure out what this was really like. Jump in the pool when it's cold. Go do the polar bear swim on January 1st or something like that to get to,
yep.
Right. Harry, about a decade ago, you know what we were doing this week?
Oh, we were biking across New York State.
Yes, we were. We did the New York State Buffalo to Albany bike ride thing, and it pretty much follows the Erie Canal,
except when it doesn't.
Except when it goes off road a little bit. But there's an episode. There's a history thing. Those people from upstate New York, you know your area, but like I knew nothing about the Erie Canal until I studied for that and did that. And then going back to one of the episodes we did a while back, build something for people that you will never meet. And we talked about that in reference to Notre Dame and how they built these great things for future generations. And I think in terms of this, like Shackleton and his guys did really great stuff. But in the end, they were searching for what? For a whaling station that people, when people first went there was not a whaling station there. And they brought the boards and the concrete and the hammers and they built the whaling station there.
Right.
Right. And now future generations get to use it. You get to drive on roads that people built in the past. You get to go to churches that they built hundreds of years ago. You get to do all these things. And, people took that effort to do that. So make sure you go out and do something for people that are in the future that you're never, ever going to meet. And then, you know what? Learn something new, get out of your comfort zone and do something interesting.
Strive to make yourself better at the end of the day. And I think that's kind of, Shackleton's expedition didn't go according to plan, but it's probably one of the two most famous failures.
With Apollo 13.
Right, in the 20th century. This and Apollo 13 were successful failures. And we know about them because this one particularly was written down. And people were out of their comfort zone, and they did something because they can, and they didn't shy away from it.
It's a great book. Read the book and then let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. And until then, until you go across the Weddell Sea on your own, remember to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.